What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Week 3, top 25 here. It was a very exciting week 2 after a very exciting week 1, and there's a lot more changes coming in my top 25 here for this week, guys. There were some teams that disappointed, some teams that really impressed, and it changed a lot of my top 25 rankings here entering week 3. We're going to dive into all that here in just a little bit, but first, let's get some business out of the way. Thank you guys so much for the support the channel has seen lately. If you guys want to continue to show your support, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you know when videos get uploaded. But guys, there are more ways than that to help me support my channel. You guys are doing one of them right now by watching this video, and you guys can do more by liking, commenting, sharing, anything else you guys are willing and or able to do to help me support my channel. So with all the business out of the way, let's talk about the top 25 here. My apologies, entering week 3. So 2 weeks are in the book, 3 for some teams. But we'll talk about that when we, of course, get to the team. I think you guys all know who I am talking about. This is a year in which I think top 25 polls can fluctuate a lot. But if you take a look at the AP poll, I do think they got it right with the 25 teams that they had in there. We'll preview that more in a little bit. But first, we got to talk about some honorable mentions. There were quite a substantial amount of teams that dropped out of my poll. Clemson, Tulane, Wisconsin. Clemson was at 16. I had some confidence about that team, that they'd be able to get things turned around, and yikes. Clemson probably still in that 25 to 30 range for me, or I should say 26 to 30, along with Tulane and Wisconsin. I still think those are both very solid teams. Again, just teams I like more. Of course, Wisconsin, Tulane ended up losing this past week, but Clemson's got a lot of things that they need to figure out. Kansas is in that conversation there as well for being a team that can rise up into the top 25. I'll be honest with you guys, Kansas is number 26 for me right now. Kansas is the 26th best team in the country, at least according to me. But you got some other teams on this board. UCF had a big win on the blue turf against Boise State. A couple teams out of the SEC here. Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M, even though the Aggies did lose. You could throw Texas Tech on this list as well as a Big 12 school, along with TCU. And then you got Maryland out of the Big 12, or Big 10, my apologies, even though they did struggle in their performance there against Charlotte for a lot of the early going. And then you have Louisville there out of the ACC as well. So a lot of teams that are just barely missing the cut here to break into the top 25. And I mentioned Texas Tech, even though they are 0-2, guys, I still believe in what Joey McGuire has with that program. They can be able to resurge back into the top 25. But none of these teams did make the cut for my top 25. So who did? Well, again, I think the AP top 25 got the teams right. The order is just a little bit different for me. So let's start here at the bottom. Washington State I have at number 25. What they were able to do against the Wisconsin Badgers was just dynamic. They were able to limit the Wisconsin run game. They were able to prove now that Wisconsin has a passing game worth of being able to be mentioned, right? That this is a Wisconsin passing attack that maybe had some things to prove, and they went out and couldn't do enough against this Washington State defense. Give a lot of credit to them and to the offense as well. Cam Ward and company looked absolutely fantastic. I was very impressed with the way that Cam Ward was able to distribute throughout the receiving core, and the way that Washington State was really able to take it to a very aggressive Badger defense. So hats off to the Washington State Cougars. They're my number 25 team here in the poll. Number 24, we got the UCLA Bruins. It is Dante Moore's team now. Yeah, that's right. Dante Moore has taken over this team, taken over this program. I feel like, at least I know they're still playing a couple of other quarterbacks there as well, but they faced 2 pretty solid teams out of the group of 5 throughout their first 2 weeks here. Coastal Carolina, while it was not the prettiest of games for them, they were able to get the job done. And then you take a look at what they did against San Diego State last week, and my, oh my, that's a very impressive defensive team for San Diego State, and UCLA looked like it was playing a high school defense out there. They were able to pretty much do whatever they wanted. UCLA, much like last year, definitely is a team that I could see climbing up. I believe they got as high as 9 in the AP poll. I'm not sure where I ended up slotting them as high in here in my polls last year. But for the UCLA Bruins, guys, really liking what this team has. I really like the team that Chip Kelly has. And again, they're one of just many Pac-12 teams that I have ranked inside my top 25. Iowa here at number 23. They do jump up a spot from last week. And again, still was not the prettiest at times against the Iowa State Cyclones. Second half performance, much like last week, or I guess the week prior against Utah State, really kind of down, and really just a poor performance when you take a look, especially what the Hawkeyes were able to do in the first half. And again, the offense, yes, it is not there yet. This defense is fantastic. I think we all know that. But the offense is what people are really keying in on this year. Yeah, the offense is probably not there quite yet. But when I take a look at this Hawkeye offense, I think it has a lot of potential and some room to still grow, right? Like there is room for this Hawkeye program to continue to trend upward in the offensive direction. It is going to take some time here, but the Hawkeyes starting out 2-0. That defense is very, very impressive. I like the way that the Hawkeyes are playing football. The Miami Hurricanes here are ranked inside the top 25. They are here for me at number 22. Again, I talked about them in my biggest takeaways video that I released earlier today. Very impressive performance against the Texas A&M Aggies. They were able to create turnovers. They were able to capitalize. Tyler Van Dyke had just a resurgence of the game, and I know that there are people that are starting to criticize his game, at least before that win there against Texas A&M. He outdueled Connor Weigman while having maybe just barely over half as many pass attempts as Connor Weigman had in that game. Miami looks good from top to bottom. I think this is a Hurricanes team that you should start believing in because that's a team that can make a run towards an ACC title. So the Hurricanes here at number 22. But number 21, guys, up 2 spots from last week, the Duke Blue Devils. They manhandled their opponent that they played last week. Still the most impressive thing they've done this year, being able to beat Clemson. Now, I also recognize that Clemson does have some issues, right? They dropped out of my top 25 poll. Guys, they were at 16 last week, and they dropped out of my poll because I'm just uncertain on what the Clemson Tigers really are right now. There are a lot of things that still have to get figured out offensively, even with the Garrett Riley hire. Defensively, I think they look fine for the most part, but that offense has some serious issues that they got to get figured out. For this Duke team, guys, they're loaded with experience offensively. They're loaded with experience defensively. Their secondaries really stepped up from where I thought that it would be here in the preseason. Duke has all the makings for a top 25 team and a sleeper team in the ACC. I've mentioned that many times before. So Duke, they're at number 21, as now we go ahead and take a look inside the top 20. North Carolina, all right, I was pretty confident about this team last week and pretty confident in the fact that, hey, guys, North Carolina, this is a team whose defense has improved, whose defense has gotten better. Did it? Did it? I mean, first of all, App State has won over everyone's hearts. They almost beat this Tar Heel team last year. They almost beat them this year. They just come up short in overtime. And that starts the questions like maybe that was an overreaction we had about week 1. I think it just means that South Carolina now has some serious issues on the offensive end and serious issues in general that the Gamecocks are going to have to figure out. They got Georgia coming up this week, so there's really no shortage of time here when I am taking a look at the South Carolina Gamecocks. But talking about the Tar Heel program here, the defense definitely still has some room to grow. While I still think it's improved from last year, I don't know if it's improved as much as maybe I said it did last week. Now, this Tar Heel offense, great, explosive. Drake May, very, very good. The defense clearly still has a lot of work to do. So they did drop 3 spots, but up in a big way here on the poll are the Colorado Buffaloes. They're up to 19. I know a lot of people are going to have them slotted inside of the top 15. I believe the AP poll has them around 18, if I'm right on that. So I'm right around there with the AP voters on Colorado. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, this coaching staff, they look great. The only thing I will say about Colorado that I'd like to see is they have Colorado State coming up next week, but then you have Oregon, and then you have USC. And guys, those are 2 teams that are going to be able to limit the mistakes. Colorado, I think, has been gifted a lot of very nice opportunities so far when you take a look at TCU and Nebraska turning over the ball to give Colorado possession really in a crucial part of the field, a part of the field that Colorado's going to, of course, go and score with the way that offense, or I should say with how dynamic that offense is. But what I'm curious to see about with Colorado is if they get into a game where they are not being gifted the football and maybe the bounce of the balls aren't going their way, are they going to be able to recover? Are they going to be able to capitalize? That's the thing I want to see from Colorado. Still a very good football team. I think it's a top 25 team. But that's one thing I want to see out of the Buffaloes moving forward. The Oklahoma Sooners are sitting here at number 18. They had their struggles at times with the SMU Mustangs, but the offense looks really, really good. I think the defense has definitely gained some room for improvement. Again, that's an SMU team that has a lot of speed on it. Oklahoma was really able to shut them down in certain facets. Again, Preston Stone, they're the quarterback for SMU is a very, very talented player. He's got a lot of very talented weapons. This Oklahoma offense has been firing on all cylinders, literally every single one. And the defense is showing signs for improvement there as well. So Oklahoma is going to keep rising in my rankings as of right now. When you take a look at the Kansas State Wildcats, they're another team out of the Big 12 Conference, and they're slated here at number 17. Still really like what the Wildcats have going on for them here in 2023. Will Howard looks great. Now, I know they really haven't played anyone significant. I mean, Troy is a very, very good team out of the Sun Belt Conference, but you got Missouri coming up this week. So that's going to be a really nice test here to see if you have really been able to replace the pieces of Deuce Vaughn, to see if you really have been able to replace the pieces of Malik Knowles. That's the leading rusher and receiver off that team from last season. I believe this Wildcat defense is still really good. I think Will Howard is an exceptionally good quarterback, but the Wildcats get their first true test here on the road against Missouri. Should be a very interesting game to watch. Can't wait to watch that one. But Ole Miss has jumped up 3 spots here. They were number 19 last week. They jump up to 16. The Tulane Green Wave are a very impressive team, and they are one of the first 5 teams out for me in my top 25 poll. Probably slot them in right there at number 27, right there behind the Kansas Jayhawks, at who I said were 26. But for the Ole Miss Rebels, that was just a very, very impressive performance. Jackson Dart, I know there were a lot of people, I didn't think this at all, but I know that there were some people, apologies for my green screen, it's been acting up lately, but there were some people that when you look at this Ole Miss program and you look at Spencer Sanders transferring in, okay, that's the starter, all the experience, how can he not be? Jackson Dart solidified himself to be that starting quarterback for the Ole Miss Rebels. Harris, that wide receiver, is absolutely phenomenal. Quinshad Junkins was able to get going at times in this game. I thought Tulane did a pretty solid job at being able to slow him down. But guys, maybe that'll help. But when I take a look at this Ole Miss team, top to bottom, I see a very good team. I see a near top 15 team. Again, there are just 15 teams that I end up liking a little bit better than Ole Miss. But Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin and company, that's a very good football team that you should keep your eye on in the SEC this year. So let's go ahead and move on now here. The Oregon State Beavers are number 15 for me. I really like the way that the Beavers have been playing ball. Again, you heard me talk about them being a team that I think deserves serious Power 5 consideration. I talked about that in my takeaways video that got released earlier today. But taking a look at Oregon State top to bottom, DJ Uiagalelei seems to have a resurgence. Damian Martinez is still what everyone thinks he is. He's an absolute stud in the running back room. And this Oregon State defense, ladies and gentlemen, is no joke. There are some ballers on this defense. They got a lot of very, very good players on the defensive side of the football there for the Oregon State Beavers. Love the way that they have been playing ball. They're going to get some tests as soon as they get into Pac-12 play here. But again, one of the few teams, much like Washington State, that are left in the Pac-12 conference. In fact, it's only them in Washington State that still have yet to find a home for 2024, whether that be the Pac-12 or somewhere else, maybe the American, maybe the Mountain West, who knows. Tennessee is down 1 spot from last week, and while I still really like this Tennessee Volunteer team overall, I like their wide receiver room, I like their running back room, I like Joe Milton as a quarterback, they really, really, really struggled against Austin Peay last week, and that's definitely some cause for concern for this Volunteer program. When you struggle against an opponent at the level of Austin Peay, and I know they're an FCS program, and they're a pretty solid FCS program at that, it's definitely a cause for concern when you struggle as much as Tennessee did there in that past game. So, the Tennessee has to go on the road to play Florida this week, which I don't think is going to be as easy of a game that some people may make it out to seem. I know Tennessee's only favored by 4. I like Tennessee a little bit more than that, but it's not going to be a pushover game here, that game on the road at Florida by any means, so they got to get some things flipped around quickly. Utah is up 1 spot. Not really sure what to feel about the Utah Utes. I definitely like them more than Tennessee Volunteers. Again, the kind of way that I can structure my poll is who would I favor on a neutral field. Me personally, I would pick Utah over Tennessee right now, but the Utes definitely had me worried there for a little bit, right? They ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in the final, 2 minutes to be able to beat the Baylor Bears, and then there was some controversy. Was it pass interference? Was it not? I understand the official not wanting to get involved. Let the players decide the game. Don't let the stripes decide the game, right? Probably should have been pass interference on that play. Apologies to all my Baylor Bears fans out there that have had to deal with that. I thought it was pass interference when I first saw it, but I also understand the perspective of, hey, let the kids play, let them decide what happens here in this game. But for the Utah Utes, Cam Rising probably can't come quick enough, right? You probably need Cam Rising there. Not to say that Nate Johnson, Bryson Barnes have done a bad job at the quarterback position here, but I do feel like the Utah Utes are going to be a lot better off as soon as Cam Rising gets back on the football field. Utah, a little bit of a scare, but they stay strong here in the top 15. They're at number 13 for me this week. Let's take a look at the LSU Tigers, who absolutely demolished Grambling State. Don't really have much to say about them still. Have some room to grow. When you take a look at their performance from this past game against Grambling State, and then that Sunday night game against the Florida State Seminoles as well. So still some room for this LSU Tiger team to grow, still some room for them to learn, and still some things for them to really get honed in on and figured out. But I still like this team. I absolutely think they're a player in the college football playoff race as of right now. There you go, only dropping one spot there to number 12. Oregon survived a tough test on the road against Texas Tech, and I don't want to I don't want to blare my horn too loudly here, but I did predict that game score exactly right. My prediction was 38-30 Oregon, and that's exactly what happened. So just golf claps. Golf claps is all I will say. You can either say I know what I'm talking about, or I'm incredibly lucky. Whatever you guys want to say, really, I'm completely fine with. But anyway, back to the Oregon Ducks here. I thought Bo Nix played well. I thought that Oregon defense really stepped up as of late, or I thought the Oregon defense really stepped up late in that game when it needed to make a stop. Ended up getting that free pick six turnover that ended up having my score prediction be right. But when I take a look at this Oregon team, yes, they did drop out of my top 10. But there are just some teams I like a little bit better than Oregon right now. So them dropping is not a result of them playing a bad game against Texas Tech. I don't think they did. I thought they played a pretty good game, but it's just again, the cause and result of some teams jumping ahead of the Oregon Ducks. That's really all that was. But let's go ahead and dive on in here to my top 10, where we see the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were number 3 in my poll last week, as they were in the AP poll, and they fall down to number 10 here for me. Now, again, I mentioned this in my weekly takeaway video, but the Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback, Jalen Milroe, did a lot of running, really a lot of running around the pocket, throughout the field, and give credit to this Texas defense. That's a huge part of why Jalen Milroe was on the run there for that game. Again, I'm just not going to worry about what's going on behind me. But when you take a look at the Alabama Crimson Tide here, I still think there's room to improve. This is the Nick Saban coach team. It's a team that I absolutely, just because they dropped a game, guys, doesn't mean the Nick Saban era is over. That's not the case at all. And it also doesn't mean that Alabama is the team that's not going to make the college football playoff. Of course, they can still go make the college football playoff. This is Alabama we're talking about. It is not an easy road to do it. And they're going to have to win out, and they're going to have to improve relatively quickly. But this is an Alabama team, still a player in the college football playoff race, still a team I really like a lot, hence why I still have them here in my top 10. Yes, there are things to improve on from that game at Texas, but there are a lot of nice things that happened. I thought the defense had a solid enough game. The secondary definitely maybe not up to the level that I thought it was at, although still some really good players there in that secondary. Again, Texas just has an embarrassment of riches in the wide receiver room. But the Alabama Crimson Tide, guys, I think will be fine. No reason to panic. They fall down 7 spots because of the laws. Again, just right now, 9 teams I like better than them. One of them being the Washington Huskies. Still really like what the Huskies are doing throughout this year. Michael Penix is one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. That pass defense has definitely seemed to improve from where it was this past season. You got an interesting test against Michigan State coming up this week. And again, if you follow that program, you know the kind of things that are going on in that program right now with Mel Tucker and whatnot. But the Washington State Huskies get an interesting test there against the Michigan State Spartans. Definitely would not hang your hat and say, okay, that's a win. Let's go ahead and focus on our next big game. No, you got to be prepared. You got to be ready to play that game because Michigan State can sneak up on you, but the Huskies still a top 10 team in my mind. I just keep getting more impressed, guys, by this Notre Dame Fighting Irish team. And if you were not a believer that Notre Dame was a team that could compete in the college football playoff field, you better start to believe now because, yes, your first two games were against Navy and against Tennessee State. Great. Those are teams you're supposed to handle. You're supposed to take care of business in. Then you go on the road to play a really tough NC State team, and an NC State team that has a pretty darn good defense at that there as well. Guys, when I take a look at this Notre Dame team here, I just am continually impressed by what I see out of this team. And Notre Dame is just, they really did prove that the way that they were able to dominate Navy, the way that they were able to dominate Tennessee State, they go in, and after a lengthy weather delay, Notre Dame goes out and just absolutely pummels NC State now. Oh boy, you better watch out for this Notre Dame team. They got Ohio State coming up here in 2 weeks. That's going to be a huge marquee matchup. Circle that one on your calendar. College game day will be there. That's going to be the biggest game of the week, guys. Love the way that this Irish team is playing football right now. They are up here to number 8. Number 7 and number 6 have stayed constant for me. The USC Trojans haven't really been able to get that solid test in quite yet. They haven't really been tested to their fullest extent, right? Watch out, though. Again, this is a USC Trojan team that I definitely think the defense is coming along. It still does need some more work, but it is a defense that is coming along, is starting to play some really good football. And, of course, we know what this offense is, right? Dynamic, explosive. Caleb Williams and has one of the most explosive skill position rooms in the entire country. It's all about that defense. Continue to show improvement week in, week out. And this is a USC team that's going to go a long, long ways this season. I still like Penn State a little bit more than them, though. And I think every single week, Penn State is starting to prove that, hey, this is going to be a 3-team race in the Big Ten East, right? You have Michigan, who's one of the college football playoff favorites. You have the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ditto for them, right? Still one of the favorites to make the college football playoff, win the Big Ten, maybe even go win the whole darn thing, right? But this Penn State team, guys, if you haven't been a believer in Penn State up to this point, start believing, because Drew Aller is for real. This Penn State defense is for real. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, maybe the best running back duo the country has to offer. Believe in Penn State, because Penn State is a team that I think anyone should fear, especially the two other blue bloods in the Big Ten Conference in Michigan and Ohio State this year. Penn State's for real. Penn State's going to do some really good things. Penn State's going to challenge anyone that they play, especially Michigan and Ohio State moving forward. So watch out for the Nittany Lions this year. That could be a very scary team to play if you have them on your schedule. Let's move into the top 5 here. I've kept the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 5. Now, again, this is an Ohio State team that I know they didn't score 50 against Youngstown State, and there are a lot of Buckeye fans, and there are a lot of other fans around the country that, in my opinion, not rightfully so, are up in arms. Oh, this Ohio State team is terrible. This offense is absolutely garbage, and this defense has no aggression whatsoever. The defense did not have to play aggressive to get past Youngstown State, and it's still taken considerable leaps and bounds forward from where it was last season, and this is probably the best defense the Buckeyes have had since 2019. Also, you've probably figured out who that number 1 quarterback will be for that team. Kyle McCord really was able to outplay Devin Brown, even though Devin Brown, again, maybe more of a utilizable player in the fact that he is a dual threat quarterback, so maybe a little bit more, or say you definitely can keep some packages for him there. But again, this Ohio State team, I think the defense gets a good test against Western Kentucky coming up, and then it's the big one against Notre Dame. Offensive line still has some room to grow there as well. But I kept the Buckeyes at 5, moving the Texas Longhorns up 8 spots there, up to number 4. Now, I know I said earlier in this video that part of the way I make this is who would I favor on a neutral field right now. I may still favor Ohio State by 1 point on a neutral field, but up to this point, guys, Texas has looked more impressive than what the Ohio State Buckeyes have been able to put together. And you know the colors, you know the team that I like to wear on my sleeves. Texas has looked more just a lot more impressive and a lot more sound on both sides of the ball. Again, this offense just proved its dynamic ability against the Alabama Crimson Tide. The defense has stepped up a long ways from where it has been in years past. Guys, I am confident in saying that Texas is back. Texas probably will end up going to win the Big 12 now. I just knocked on wood for all of you Texas fans out there. And Guys, this is the Texas team that's going to be well within the mix to make the college football playoff. That I absolutely believe. So Texas right there at number 4. If you want to put Ohio State above Texas there at number 4, Texas at 5, that's not going to bother me either because, again, to me, those margins are really, really slim there. But the top 3 teams in the nation right now, I think, are Florida State at number 3, Michigan at 2, Georgia at 1. We're going to start with the Florida State Seminoles, who looked mighty impressive still in that win against Southern Miss, and Florida State's just going to continue to roll. They have probably one of the more experienced teams in the entire country, and this is a Florida State Seminole team that's very well coached. It plays a very good, very, very sound brand of football. The offense is high-flying, electric when it has to be. The defense is aggressive. It has a great, great pass rush, and Florida State has Clemson coming up here in, 2 weeks? Definitely going to be a very exciting game to watch. We'll see how far Clemson has come along to that point. Michigan is still without Coach Jim Harbaugh, but they still look like one of the best teams in the entire country. Blake Corum really had a very good game last week against UNLV. Again, you have Bowling Green coming up this week, so probably shouldn't be much trouble there before you play Rutgers. Then you go on the road to play the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But for the Michigan Wolverines, they probably will not get a really true big test here for honestly quite some time. But when I take a look at this Michigan team top to bottom, I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I still think there's no doubt that the Georgia Bulldogs are still the best team in the country, though they have the most talented roster. They really started to show their physicality and improve from that UT Martin game, especially on the offensive line from last week. I don't think I have to speak too much more on Georgia. They are my number 1 team. Guys, there are my top 5 teams. Let you look at them a little bit more, but that was my Week 3 top 25. Let me know any thoughts you guys have in the comment section down below. And hey, as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.